My name is Dr. Wadell Brooks Sr., your host, and this is Lake County Community Forum. Ladies and gentlemen, we're very fortunate to have with us Mr. Edward Bates. He's a retired from the Lake County Regional Office of Education in Grays Lake, Illinois, as a past director, and PASS is an acronym for Positive Alternative Student Services. Good evening, Mr. Bates.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Brooks.
We're very happy to have you take time literally from your busy schedule to be with us on Lake County Community Forum to let Lake County know that you are a person that Lake County should know. There have been a lot of talking in the election about how important the role that Black women played in the election. But I want to show them that Black men played a great part too. And you're one of the ones that made a great, still making great contribution, but you don't get the press, that the Black women is gotten. And they'll understand this when we get through the program. But first of all, I want you to tell our listening audience a little bit about your personal and professional background.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks again, and thank you for having me on the show today. Again, my name is Ed Bates, Edward Bates, and in particular, short for Ed sometime. Now, I have been in Lake County, wow, for over 30 years, and I spent 27 years of those in the Lake County Regional Office of Education. But I started my professional career over in Indiana. I started out after I graduated from Indiana University back in the late 70s. And then I went on to get a master's degree from Valparaiso University, which is also in Indiana. And then I worked in Indiana as a probation officer for almost 10 years in the juvenile court system. I ended up as a supervisor in that division. And then I received another master's degree, went back to school, and received a master's in education administration. And so I finished that at Northeastern here outside of Chicago. And I spent then after that, my remaining career in education. So I've been around for a minute. Overall, after I retired, I continued to do a little consulting work, and that I worked with the Illinois law enforcement agencies that at that time were working on training for schools, Illinois Terrorism Task Force, so forth and so on. So my career kind of expanded the last 37 years.
Now, what piqued your interest in Lake County, Illinois?
Well, I thought I was pretty good in geography, so I had a little geography problem. I was over in Indiana, and I actually answered an ad for a position, and it said North Chicago. And so for us on the other side of the lake, we just thought it was the Evanston area and that type of thing. That's what we considered the north side. So we didn't know, I didn't think it was the city in and of itself. So that was an eye opener, but I learned a lot, and I ended up coming to the area, and naturally with it being so far, I was offered the position, so I had to relocate to this area, and I've enjoyed it ever since.
Now, what are some of your major accomplishments while serving in the Regional Office of Education in Lake County?
Well, we spent in the early 80s, we had great partnerships here in Lake County with major agencies working together across the board. Back in that time, it was called a Private Industry Council. They have but it was a grant-funded program through the Department of Labor. We worked with at that time again, called PIC, Private Industry Council, which is our workforce development department here in Lake County now. And they provided summer job program. And so we had an interesting concept by working with a group out of Philadelphia at the time, a research group, So we received a major grant from the Department of Labor to be a pilot. There was about 11 of us around the country. In Lake County was one of us. There was another one in Kankakee, and they made up the two represent the state of Illinois. So that pilot program, uh, we continued to work with throughout the summer, in that we would work with the private industry council. They would provide the jobs. And then through the school district, we would hire teachers over the summer, and they would provide the educational component. So that program ended up where we received national attention for the academic outcomes that we received. And those programs, again, no longer exist today, but the partnerships, working in collaboration like that, giving children an opportunity to have on-the-job training, classroom training, and then academic support from their teachers, was just a great, great project. And it ended up where I was recognized for that project. I had a national dropout prevention recognition as a individual in dropout prevention to be someone you should know. And so again, just those kinds of things, working in collaboration with others to get great positive outcomes for kids like that, was something that I was very proud of, and some of the greatest work I think we did here in Lake County by working together. So it was a great, great partnership. The recognition, yes, we did receive, but more importantly, I still see those students who are adults today, and they ask, where are those programs today that they were involved in back then? So that's one of my proudest moments here in Lake County.
Now, one of your major accomplishments, as we know it, is with Daisy's Resource and Developmental Center. And we had several students from the high school, dropouts and expulsions and, you name them. And we got them on the right track to your encouragement and your professional training there. And we're grateful for that. We're on the list too of your major accomplishments, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah, when I retired, I came over to Daisy's and was able to work a few years there, and that's exactly it. Our alternative support for students who otherwise were off track, and a program like that just helped them to get back on track and help them to graduate, and that's so very important. Continues to be important today.
Okay.
Just
now, tell us about the importance of safety training in high schools.
Well, the kind of training that we were doing at the end, it came out of 9/11. If you remember when the country was attacked in the Twin Towers, and major changes around the country started to take place in terms of showing up their protective agencies and getting things in place that would do and prevent any kind of hopefully attack again. And so in Illinois, there was a law passed that would mandate training for our schools in collaboration with our police departments, fire departments, to prepare for and train for any emergency that would occur in school. That includes school shootings, but natural disasters such as tornadoes and storms and that kind of thing that might take place, floods or anything. And just prepare to respond so that we in turn will keep children safe. And so that was some of the work I was doing near the end when I retired. And that would bring those trainings into the schools. Most of our schools over the years have always provided, regular bus training, fire drills, but they weren't used to school shootings, obviously, and they weren't used to the kind of response that our fire and police departments do. And so we had to train with them in the new ways that they were responding to school shootings and that type of thing, so that we in turn would be prepared in the future for anything. And so those types of things still, the law itself is still in place. The training, I hope, is still taking place. I believe it is, although I'm retired. That training, though, was something that we would make sure on an annual basis, every school would just do a check-off list and making sure that we had their dates, we had their plans, and we knew exactly when they were going to plan, when they were going to train, who they were training with, sign off with our police departments, our mayors, and our city councils, and making sure that just everybody's just on the same page. And that's something that, again, is still required by state law. And hopefully, even with the pandemic, hopefully those types of training and briefings are still in place.
Now, who monitor the type of training? Because it's so important.
Yes, it is. The Regional Office of Education has like a little one-page report that every school at the beginning of the year will send to the regional office. It's a checklist, if you will, but it has on there the dates of their training, planned training as well. They're generally sending that in the beginning of the year so we can see when their dates are planned and things like that. And we check to see if they're in collaboration with, again, police and fire, because they must have at least one of those training together. So then if, for example, we don't receive someone from a various schools, then we just make contact with them and make sure we get that information. So it's the Regional Office of Education that monitors that kind of training.
You served as vice chairman at one time, but Uniting Our Communities Coalition. You want to tell us about that program?
Yeah, that program had a lot to do, particularly with North Chicago's graduation rate of, it had one of the lowest actually in the country, but actually there was one of the lowest in the state, and they were up there in the country as well. So we had programs in place that we were monitoring, and again, like the STEP program, I talked about that national program, those types of programs help keep kids in school, gave them academic support, gave them job training while they were still in school so they can make the connection between school and the job. And I mean, see it immediately. These are 14, 15-year-olds. So again, all of those types of support systems, putting all those things in place were the type of things that we were doing at that time. So,
what is your evaluation of why North Chicago was one of the lowest in the state? Matter of fact, I hate to say it, but East St. Louis, my hometown, was at the bottom, and North Chicago was right above them. They were, and now it was North Chicago's on the bottom, and East St. Louis is next to it. Why is that so?
well, one of the things with your original question too was that uniting our community and some of the things in there that we needed to do.
Mm-hmm.
In high-risk communities, you're always going to get various opinions and things like that. But over time, at the end of the day, these children need help, and the young people, and oftentimes the parents as well. And they need the kind of systems that we have that are in standards. And in other words, the graduation standards that you see for high-risk children around the country would be the same kind of standards you would want to see here in North Chicago. And so by organizing like that, it is to create those kinds of standards and then to create where we work together, like we talked about in those collaborative before, to achieve that. But the problems are real. The young people are off track. Every community has young people who are off track. And so you just have to go and get them, provide the support services they need, and then put them back on track. And the commitment to it is just that. And so by creating a Uniting Our Community group, it was to create those kinds of plans where we could work together. These plans were something we could see. Transparency is in there. But in those plans, you want to see those standards for how these children graduate, and not just be everybody's views and opinion. We need science, we need data to support it, and we need proven, techniques and strategies that's worked before. And so when you don't see that in the operation, then you want to organize to do that and then insist that we put those kinds of plans in there. And so that's what's really missing. One of the things we, back in 2005 even, when we first started some of the school safety training, we put in those school safety plans, remote educational learning. That was 15 years ago. And because of COVID, you now see it. The reason a lot of schools were not totally ready, some were and some others weren't, because they had not updated those plans to already include remote learning. And so we knew it, but it's a matter of planning and then not just be skeptical if we, and the goal there is we hope we never need it, but the plans are if we do. And so we ended up needing it. The reason though that remote learning could still be a lifesaver for many at-risk children, because now school districts know that it's something that we have to do and that it works. In some districts before, it was some administrators had problems with individuals not physically being in the building and somewhere on an off-site doing educational learning. Now it's acceptable, given where we are. That philosophy could help more children graduate. If you have problem with children physically in a seat, the off-site training and learning now is something that we can use to increase the graduation rate. And that is something that has always been a part of the standards before. But now, more than ever, we need it because of the new direction we seem to be going. And then we're not quite sure exactly how long, but if no matter what the time frame is, the remote learning can help us to educate more children during this particular era, in particular high-risk children who were not graduating before. And so we hope we'll be able to do that. So the Unite Now community group was a group of parents and community partners who was exactly trying to do that, set up kind of transparency and plans where we can work together to achieve those kind of goals. But that is why, more than anything else, you don't see some of the standards in these communities that you mentioned, East St. Louis, North Chicago, relating to how you improve those children's outcomes that you see across the country in alternative school standards. And it's just data driven. If you don't see it, it doesn't exist. If it's not committed to it in terms of the dollars and the plan, then it doesn't exist. You have activities, but it doesn't result in increasing those things like graduation rates and things like that. Whereas we can do that and monitor that when we can do it the way we're talking about going forward, particularly during the pandemic. But it's something too that has to be accepted. It's not something where people, just look at that and say, well, it's a high-risk community, people of color live there. And all of these other arguments that says things like they don't value education and stuff like that. That's not ever the issue. But you have to have training like anything else to work with a high-risk population like that. And it's not just something you just pick up and do. And you have to have that commitment to it. But it's also some training that you're going to need to be able to work with a group of students who initially don't want to work with you.
The question is raised, is there any hope for the school system in North Chicago or for
Absolutely, yes. There's always hope. But more importantly, I've been around long enough now to have seen young people who are adults now and have their own children. Mm-hmm. And some of the ones that are doing well and that you see in the community sometimes, like I run into in a restaurant, I love seeing those type, and they come up to you and they say, hey, do you have those programs? Because I need it for my son or daughter. And you look and you go, wait a minute, this individual, I never thought maybe it would even make it. That's how bad it was. Not only are they making it, they're being a great parent in the community and they're looking out for their children. So that's the kind of hope you look for. They were off track and they weren't doing all other things, but with time and with specific training. The training I'm talking about though is not things that you just say, for example, just talk about. It's real specific, saying to a high-risk child, you're on the wrong tracks, get on the right track. A high-risk child don't know what you just said. Mm-hmm. But when you say that and you actually show him a track, and on this track, there's drugs and alcohol and prison and violence, it's where you're going to end up. It's just the end stop. On this track, Going to school every day, listening to your teacher, trying your best will lead you to this kind of an outcome. And so when you can teach them to see it, practice it, touch it, be a part of it, they do make it. And that's the hope.
We have a Learn Charter School, for example. They occupy one of the buildings in North Chicago, Yeager School, and they're doing if Learn Charter School can turn students around, why can't the school district do it?
And they actually can. It can be done. It's again, sustained commitment to it. Looking at all of the problems. Obviously, those are smaller settings, if you will, but nevertheless, the concept is the same, the commitment to it. And then to really just bring up that population who are so far behind. By bringing them up, you're going to increase your graduation rates for the entire district. And so to make sure that we're just not leaving that population because of their issues and their problem, because then that's why our graduation rates and all of those things continue to be off track when we do it.
Advi has a lot of confidence in North Chicago. They're investing $40 million in one of the attendance centers to build an academy, the Neal
Yes.
Academy. So that's saying that here's an outside agency he had confidence.
And again, that's one of those great community partnerships, obviously, where they being part of the community and valuing education, the future of their employees, of local individuals, depend on that. So I can see, I'm quite sure there might be some additional support systems, I hope, since there have been a lot of changes since the pandemic and the new direction that we're going, that also emphasis of those young people in that academy who are not making it, to make sure that they do. And so it's a great idea to continue to work together in partnership with everybody in the community. But at the end of the day, we also want to measure our outcomes and take a look at what we can do differently and better. But this is a great start to have the kind of partnerships that at least do invest in the children and the possibilities of what they could bring for the future.
The community has hope too, even though, the real estate values are low, where the income is not as great as the real estate community south of us, maybe $2 million and $2 billion, I guess, south of us, and we're about 200 million. That makes a difference too, where
Yes.
you just don't have but the community still, and also where our rental population is great too. We're not an ownership.
Yes, a lot of transit and coming in and out still exists.
But we do have outside. I had a person that's from Lake Forest want to come in and teach the kids tennis, something like that. And someone from Wilmette want to come in and have a boxing club. And I had someone from Gurnee want to come in and start a kids interest in baseball. So we do have all these outside people want to come in and make North Chicago. So they have confidence that North Chicago can really improve. But what is it though? Internally, we just can't get the administration to really go. And the community looking at this, they say our administrators get $100,000 a year, but but the production of the students are not there. So what would you tell the community?
Well, again, sometimes we measure activities under the, idea that those produce the right outcomes.
Mm-hmm.
And that's not necessarily true. You might just be measuring activities. But if you want to truly get to the outcomes, then you need to be able to have you know, that data reported to you directly. Think about much of what you just said of people who want to come in and do these things. And most of those things already existed in communities that are providing those kinds of sources. And so that's one of the big things already, is to have, you know, a department almost where, you know, it's not just someone telling you where the services are, but actually ensuring that those services are there. North Chicago suffer, like a lot of communities that don't have a lot of resources, but they suffer from not having an actual youth services department or youth services bureau that's ran by the citizens of North Chicago, report to the North Chicago. It doesn't exist like that at current, at least it didn't when I retired. Most of those were outside agencies that came into the community, provided that support, and then go back out. And that's nothing wrong from the standpoint that, you know, you can get that support. But when you start talking about long-term commitments, resources that exist in your community, and reporting out and working collaboratively with those in your community as well, not that you don't accept outside help, you do always, then you can begin to move differently. But in terms of the actual youth department in the city of North Chicago, you haven't had one. And so you continue to depend on outside agencies to come in, and you don't have anybody reporting to you what we're doing, how it's happening, and you know, working collaboratively with all that data and those other program managers to come up with then these kinds of outcomes. But it's still hopeful. It's something that can still be put in place. And even with outside agencies coming in to provide their support, it is still hopeful and it's helpful. But going forward into the future, it is time to develop those resources right there where the children don't have to travel outside of the community to receive the support. And those individuals who want to develop these programs can come in and just work in collaboration with these systems that already exist to provide that. And so that's what we're talking about, is creating where you have a system that can provide those support and they report back to you. And not that, you know, it's just outside agencies and everybody writing their grants individually and things like that. So that would be very helpful. We've made that recommendation from the Uniting Our Communities parent group, because again, it doesn't exist. And until you start to have someone who can come to you and give you a report on it, your children, not just all over the place, but an umbrella, a youth department reporting out in the whole, then, you know, it's going to take longer. But going forward, it is something that we should begin to look at addressing in order to ensure that you have that support.
Mr. Bates, you are truly a visionary, and we need more visionaries like you in the city of North Chicago, in the county. For example, here in North Chicago, we have the Great Lakes Naval Base. We have Abbott, and we got the VA Medical Center. Not the VA, it's the James A. Lovell, I guess, Medical Center. And further down the road, we have another center. What's the name? Further south than the VA.
Oh yes, I know what you're talking about, the medical.
Yeah, right. We have all those
medical school. Yeah.
Yeah, we have all those facilities surrounding us. You know, a lot of cities would love to have that to support.
Yes, yes. And then, you know, we can still benefit from all of that, you know, again, but again, if we can have a department that focus on youth, just like you would have in other departments, you know, planning and development and, you know, different various departments. A youth department can really help you address the problems of youth and then preparing for the future as well, thus addressing everybody's issue, you know, employment later on, graduation rates and, education in the county, in the community, in the city itself. So it's just something that we truly believe would help develop those children faster. And then you can do more direct programming without transferring all over to different cities to receive the service.
Mm-hmm. Time is fleeing, but I like to discuss, oh my goodness, do you have any civic activities, fraternal? Are you active in church? Do you have any hobbies, to keep you going?
Oh, yes. Well, I'm involved with the Omega Psi Phi fraternity. I've been in that for 45 years. And that's a community service organization. We just was involved a few months ago with a virtual conferencing on, again, graduating young people and preventing violence, hopefully, particularly with young men.
Mm-hmm.
And, obviously we just came off a campaign, we get out the vote. And so we stay busy that way. I got a couple grandkids and, a little 2-year-old boy and 8-year-old granddaughter, but the little boy, that's keeping you pretty busy there, boy.
Right.
That's different. So, but I enjoy those things as well. But community as a whole, we're just all in this together. And I just think that, these young people are they're going to make it, some kind of way, with or without us. But we hope it's with us, because then they see you out somewhere and they say, hey, I remember when. And more importantly, we keep them on track, and they are on track looking out for their own children at that point. So that's what we hope to achieve. So just working together, hopefully we can just get everybody on the same page and take advantage of, us being here personally and being a part of this new world that we seem to be carving out.
With all of this, what is your ultimate goal? Where would you like to be 10 years from now?
Well, I still like to be active like yourself. You've been a role model for a lot of people. And, I think, you don't, in your activities, defy age. And so I don't see age as being a hindrance, unless they physically, break you down. So I like to continue in the community and doing, staying active where I can. I like the fraternal approach to mentoring young people. We do that. So I'm always open to particularly young people. But I love being a grandparent right now too. So I'm spending a lot of time with that.
I have to have you mention one national program you have, the SAVE program. Tell us about that accomplishment.
That was actually, and we did that in North Chicago, and just great work came out of that. Great citizenship too. We had about 3 students out of the high school there to become national board members of that SAVE organization. But SAVE was the Students Against Violence Everywhere. It's a national organization that operates in schools around the country, and started as a result of some violence in the community that toppled over into the school. So a group of students got together with some mentors, some adults, and eventually it became a national program. So these are clubs with a national membership, and they are part of the national organization, and they operate within the schools. They do everything from school safety training, staying safe online, to date violence, and again, all those types of things that would be the kind of challenges for young people. So again, the goal, stay safe and provide those kind of training and support to them. Everything from pedophiles and what to look for to parent training, so that they understand how to train their children, of how to recognize, potential predators and those types of things. So again, it was a great program, still exists. The chapter in North Chicago is closed because we was the one who basically ran it. And when we left, it kind of died. And that's sad. And that's what I mean by having existing agencies in place where these programs can continue, and it shouldn't have to exist when a person retire.
Well, we're going to have to continue a part 2 another time. And
All
ladies and
right.
gentlemen, we've been talking with Mr. Edward Bates on here, Lake County Community Forum, retired past director, Positive Alternative Student Services with the Lake County Regional Office of Education, Grays Lake, Illinois. And we want to thank you for tuning in another session on Lake County Community Forum. My name is Dr. Wadell Brooks Sr., your host.